Learn and listen English anytime, anywhere. Why has China earned far more hate than the US? In fact, where the US has bombed since WW2, which the US did in the last 7 decades. What do you make of this? Well, firstly, I think the question begins with a false premise, that being that China is far more hated than the US, China is hated only in the realm and to the extent that the United States has information superiority, which is mostly English-speaking countries with a smatter of formerly colonized nations, and as such, within the sphere of America's information superiority, thrown in the mix.
But what is information superiority anyway? As per the official documentation of the United States Department of Defense, information superiority is as follows.
Information superiority is the operational advantage derived from the ability to collect, process, and disseminate an uninterrupted flow of information while exploiting or denying an adversary's ability to do the same, and what gives the U.S. their information superiority. Due to a colonialist past, one in which genocide of native peoples was barely even frowned upon, the British spread the English language all over the globe, and as the world developed, English became the lingua franca of the world, the mother tongue when it comes to politics, business, and everything else. Post-WW2, as Britain saw its empire in decline, the U.S. moved to the head of the world stage, and only became stronger and stronger. Then came the Vietnam War, when the Americans got a real taste of suffering and faced losing in war, despite raising the bar with extreme brutality, Operation Rolling Thunder, and outright war crimes. My Lai Massacre. The American body bags piled up, as did the coffins being sent home. This is all that was on the news, and people quickly lost their taste for war. Riots ensued. Kent State shootings. The power elite in America grew tired of the constant anti-war protests by students, and at some point, they cracked down. The Kent State shootings, also known as the May 4th Massacre and the Kent State Massacre, were the killings of 4 and wounding of 9 other unarmed Kent State University students by the Ohio National Guard on May 4, 1970 in Kent, Ohio, 40 miles south of Cleveland. The killings took place during a peace rally opposing the expanding involvement of the Vietnam War into neutral Cambodia by United States military forces, as well as protesting the National Guard presence on campus. The incident marked the first time that a student had been killed in an anti-war gathering in United States history. It is roughly around this time that the powerful in America realize that the people's minds need to be prepared to accept war as the norm, and with methods originally developed by Ed Bernays, who was a hero of Nazi propagandist Paul Goebbels, despite being a Jewish American, began to do what Chomsky calls manufacture consent. Operation Mockingbird. So this was the point that the CIA infiltrated MSM. It hasn't stopped, despite official reports saying it has, and began strictly controlling the narrative pushed out to the wider world. Operation Mockingbird is an alleged large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, that began in the early years of the Cold War and attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. According to author Deborah Davis, Operation Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into a propaganda network and influenced the operations of front groups. CIA-supported front groups was exposed when a 1967 Ramparts magazine article reported that the National Student Association received funding from the CIA. First success. So by now, the CIA has their tentacles into the entire free press apparatus of the English-speaking world. And along comes another opportunity, which is how I believe the U.S. military-industrial complex sees it, for war, that is, the 1990 invasion of Iraq. But do they need to fear the student protests now? Nope. They have spent 22 years manufacturing consent to make the world safe for democracy, unregistered trademark anywhere on the globe. But just to be sure, they manufacture a bit more consent via the NARA testimony. The NARA testimony was a false testimony given before the United States Congressional Human Rights Caucus on October 10, 1990 by a 15-year-old girl who provided only her first name, NARA. The testimony was widely publicized and was cited numerous times by United States senators and President George H.W. Bush in their rationale to back Kuwait in the Gulf War. In 1992, It was revealed that Nara's last name was al-Abba, and that she was the daughter of Saud al-Sabah, the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States. Furthermore, it was revealed that her testimony was organized as part of the Citizens for a Free Kuwait public relations campaign, which was run by the American public relations firm Hill and Amp Knowlton for the Kuwaiti government. Information superiority wins every time. You can literally program your citizens, and those within your sphere of influence, in what to think on any topic. DARPA. What's DARPA and why is it important? The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, is a research and development agency of the United States Department of Defense responsible for the development of emerging technologies for use by the military. This doesn't seem that interesting until you discover some of the things DARPA has invented. There are a lot, but I'll just name two. 1. Siri. Yes, the AI which is running 24/7 in your Apple phone was built by the American military. 2. The Internet. Yes, the Internet was literally built by this barely known sector of the U.S. military. There is a lot more I could disclose here, but I think my point is made. America really cares about information superiority. So, why has China earned far more hate than the U.S.? Well, supposing this is true, it would be because the U.S. has built an enormous information dominance machine and uses it to sculpt the attitudes and opinions of normal citizens to manufacture consent for future wars. It doesn't matter if China leads the world in greening the planet. With informational superiority, they'll show you something like this. It doesn't matter if China hasn't invaded another nation for half a century. On Saturday evening, Trump called former U.S. President Carter to talk about it. It was the first time they'd spoken, Carter said. He said Trump told him that he is particularly concerned about how China is getting ahead of us. Carter said he agreed with Trump on this issue, and do you know why? Carter said, I normalized diplomatic relations with China in 1979. Since 1979, do you know how many times China has been at war with anybody? None. And we have stayed at war, he said. China and Vietnam actually fought a brief border war in early 1979, weeks after U.S. relations with China were normalized. Carter said the United States is the most warlike nation in the history of the world due to a desire to impose American values on other countries, and he suggested that China is investing its resources into projects such as high-speed railroads instead of defense spending. With informational superiority, they'll show you something like this. And the big one, it doesn't matter if dozens of nations, many of the Muslim majority, come out in defense of China regarding America's smears and lies about a genocide of Muslims in Xinjiang, even when Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Russia along with 34 other countries came out in China's defense in the United Nations, as did the official Organization of Islamic Cooperation, because with informational superiority, they'll show you something like this. Conclusion. I hope you'll excuse this answer for being a little bit all over the place, but I think if you read it carefully, you'll see why China has accumulated a lot of hatred in recent years. They have been attacked with a massive propaganda campaign by a brutal regime with a centuries-long history of military aggression and genocide, and they do not, yet, have a comparable informational projection power to defend themselves. Most of the world has been taught that 1. If China talks, it's a lie, and 2. If someone else talks on China's behalf, they are being paid by the CCP. This situation was deliberately manufactured and leaves your target with no means of defending themselves. If China didn't have such a mighty military, they would have already been invaded, brutalized, and occupied, and much of the brainwashed world would be here cheering the U.S. on.